Yo, what is going on, my fellow weebs? Chrono here, and welcome back to the channel. So, as you can see, my office is pretty plain. It's in the middle of being remodeled. Working on it, just give me some time. However, in the meantime, if you guys are paying attention to most recent updates, we have two brand new weapons that have popped up. And needless to say, some things have shifted. I've seen some changes that I'm not the biggest fan of. However, at the same time, I can kind of see where things are going, and there's a bit of speculation involved as well. They'll be talking about the Legend Rarity 2 weapon, the Leyend, I believe is what it's called. And is it the Volgen, I want to say, the new weapon, the upgraded version of the previous version. We'll go over each of them, everything that has to do with them, their stats, of course, their potentials, and how much damage they actually deal in today's video. But before we jump into new here, as always, my name is Chrono. I primarily cover PSO2 content. Would much appreciate you subscribe to work towards that brand new goal of 15K. We hit 10K, let's go ahead and keep it rolling. Either way, let's go ahead and jump into today's video. So if you've never watched one of these videos, we do check out the Visophone site. Previously, we used to look at the PSO2 wiki, but it looks like it's not being updated anymore. Unfortunate. Looks like the Visophone is actually being worked on still and is seeing some changes. In case you're curious of where we find this information, you can head over to, I'll leave it linked in the video. I usually just look up Visophone at PSO2, usually find out what I'm looking for, but PSO2NA.arcs-Visophone to find what you're looking for. We scroll on down and we can just click on weapons directly, which will give us an entire list of the weapon series that are currently available. As you can see what they actually attach to. You can see basically everything you need to know, weapons, types, and potentials, and all that good stuff right there. We're gonna go ahead and scroll on down. Now, normally I would have the pages open directly for those specific weapons, but as you can see, the Volgen, so you know it is the Volgen, not the Volgen. The Volgen as well as the Leyend do not have their weapon pages currently set up yet. So we'll have to look at the table for this information this time around. So Volgen has quite a bit of stat jump over the Volgen. Now, granted, looking at the two, you really wouldn't have thought that it would get much of a power bump, seeing as, like, realistically, it just didn't have a lot of place to go with its base damage. Its base damage is already very, very close to that of Krez, but what we saw in Krez was the insanely high potency. However, Volgen got a pretty nasty potency bump. They went from the 45% they had previously with 5% crit rate, 10% PP consumption, damage resistance, and increased photon blast gauge when attacking, which is really good, by the way. It's having all those things together, really, really solid. It got a jump from 45 to 51% potency. This jump is pretty massive. The jump of potency plus base damage is actually pretty freaking crazy. And I say that because I want you to look at another weapon down there. We have the Leyend. Leyend is supposed to be the next tier in our support weapons, and it is a nasty bump in power. If you look at our current Krez, we've got 1359 as the Krez weapon. The Leyend goes to 1366. So not only is it getting a sizable jump when it comes to its base power, that's not the only jump it's getting. This time around, they're really trying to make sure these weapons are actually usable. I mean, granted, Legend Dios is really good comparatively to Arcacelia just because it had a pretty solid potency. As you can see, it has 47%. And it also had a decent bump when it came to its base damage. However, this time around, they went further with Leyend. Leyend is 54%, 2% over Krez at 52%, as you can see here. And while Krez does have the increased plus 3% potency and PP consumption, and that effect ends when you take damage, 20% of your max HP in a single hit, basically. This is the way they word this is a little bit weird, but it's 20% of your max HP in a single hit. It is not 20% of your max HP over, like, just in damage overall. But basically, whenever you take that damage, you lose the potency. Cleaving unit gives a weakness to enemy for 20 seconds when you land an attack. The weakened enemies deal 10% less damage. You also get 3% potency and 10% damage resistance against enemies that are weakened, starting 10 seconds after equipped. So not only are you putting a weakened target on them, it doesn't say that there's any sort of internal cooldown on this, so it's like kind of like the effect of gelin essentially you can get on your target. You also get the effect that it used to be a super special ability they had, phrase decay I believe is what it was called, where you did extra damage to targets that were affected by gelin more or less. So not only are you weakening targets like gel and wood, you also get the effect of doing increased damage, and you also have increased damage resistance against those targets. So you're getting 54% plus an extra 3% on top of that when it comes to your potency. That is massive. So not only are you 2% over, you're also matching the 3% potency, and it is consistent as long as that target has been hit by your Leyend weapon or any Leyend weapon in general. So you're offering support, but you're also offering damage. So needless to say, when we take a look at the calculations here in a bit, you shouldn't be surprised at what we see here. What might surprise you is the Volgen weapon or Volgen weapon, and we can talk exactly why it is at the point that it is. Now, this is the point of the video. I'm going to give you a bit of a warning. We're going to be popping over to a damage calculator. This is Cakewalk's damage calculator. Member of the community, super awesome dude. There'll be links in the video description over to his socials and all that good stuff there in case you want to follow him. He also is hanging out in our Discord as well, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask there. Just don't bother that guy too much. Either way, when it comes to the damage calculator, it's in a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet is going to be on a white background. I've tried putting it on darker backgrounds. It looks terrible. We aren't able to see things very well. So this is your flashbang warning. If you're in a dark room, can't say I didn't warn you. All right, so here we are over on Cakewalk's damage calculator. Like I said, the link we've right in the video description. It's also right here in case you don't want to even scroll down. You just prefer to type it in. All you need to do is click on File and then click on Make a Copy, and then you can go ahead and make any edits you need to make for your specific information. As always, you're able to adjust your class skills, your exact add-on skills, what you have specifically, and that will affect your overall damage and the damage numbers for you. We're going to keep things consistent, assuming people are keeping up with what they have going on. So we've got 20 across the board, which, I mean, I have 20 across the board. I'm sure Cake has 20 across the board. Many people do. Keep in mind, it also does include things like the Abandak customization setup. So you can see this is perfect 20 Abandak. So that is also going to be included. And if there are any updates or changes, you can actually see it right here. So this do a great job of updating that information. Scrolling on down, you can see the classes that we're selecting for this this comparison. Classes we're going with is Bouncer, Slayer. Of course, there is different loadouts you can utilize. There's a lot to this. I'm not going to go over everything specifically, but there is a lot to the actual to the calculator. So you guys should definitely take it out if you're trying to find out exactly how powerful something is against something else. Now we have the Volgen weapon, the Volgen weapon. The Volgen weapon is what's going to be our baseline here in this situation. We're going to compare that to the other weapon choices that we have. I think it's, yeah, Volgen, right? That's what we should be looking at. Yep, Volgen. Just wanted to make sure. So this is just the standard best in slot setup right now for augments. Again, your augments might cause things to vary a little bit, but when it comes down to the damage right now between the different weapons, it's pretty standardized across the board. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. So we've got a Wix 3 weapon. Wix 3, or Wix in general, is just kind of what you go for now. It is the strongest option for damage. You can go attack. Attack's not terrible. You can go blaster. Blaster's also not bad either, especially with weapons like this. As long as you're running Orgus, or just at least Orgus 3 on your units. Anything lower than that, you're not really going to make much use out of something like blaster. You're probably going to go with something like attack. And then I'll just scroll down really quick. You can see all the augments that are used. They're the same across the board here. Nothing too crazy. It's just going to be comparisons when we're looking at this stuff here. And this is also going to be comparative to what we have up here for the Abandak customization setup as well. So this is going to be full comparison of all of these. The only thing that would differ here in this situation is going to be Slayer specifically. I still believe Slayer might have a little bit of different. I haven't checked the exact calculations. They might have one augment that's a bit different on their end, or they might be exactly where we are, but the difference in the comparison might have to do with the extra crit rate that's provided. Might be a little bit less useful for Slayer, or it could put them over a bracket that might make it even more useful. Basically, the only difference is going to be for Slayer specifically. However, it's going to be minor, and it's going to depend specifically on your weapon setup. So I recommend going ahead and tossing it in here. I've stalled long enough. Let's go ahead and pop over to the actual DPS calculations. So if we scroll on over, we can see the comparisons. Now, the comparisons are done for these specific fixes. So we have Fixo Wix on a weak point, because you always have access to weak points. Let's be for real here. Abandak at 20. This isn't that difficult to hit anymore. Fixa Termina, Fixa Fatale, and Fixa Attack. If you're thinking, well, what about Blaster? Just go Attack. Honestly, at this point, I'm pretty sure Attack is just the better play altogether. But you're more than welcome to plug in your stuff and see what is better for you overall. Your add-on skills also do kind of make a difference here too. All right, so So if we look at Volgen and we go all the way, or Volgen, excuse me, we go all the way over to Wix 3, which is our baseline, we can kind of get a comparison to JVolg, to Leyend, and also to Krez. And as you can see, Krez at just 75% uptime is still about 1% stronger, roughly 2% stronger with a Krez than you would with a Volgen. However, you got to keep in mind that Krez is way more difficult to get a hold of these days than it would have been for your Volgen. So Volgen is caught up almost to where Krez is at right now by about a difference of 1%. You can actually kind of see the difference in damage here. So it was more of like 5-ish%, maybe a little bit more when it comes to JVolg. But with the Volgen, now it is about a difference of 1%. I'll be honest, I don't like how much this has jumped. I think this jumped forward a little too quickly. It makes me feel like they're only going to have 3 upgrades for this weapon, which is possible seeing as it seems like they're doing more horizontal progression with other weapons as well. Things like Leyend. We also have upgrades for, what's the weapon called again? Leyend is on the horizon as well. Apparently supposed to be seeing an upgrade in a couple of months. And if the rumors are to be believed, now granted, I don't report on rumors, nor do I report on leaks. I don't know this for a fact, so I'll take this with a gigantic grain of salt. But we are supposed to be seeing some upgrades possibly for other weapons too in the future. Things like things we've been using currently, possibly Krez and so on. Now granted, again, no confirmed information, nor have I looked at any leaks to be able to tell you this is exactly what's going on. But the streets do talk, and I do want to be honest with you guys. When they talk, they do also talk to me. So you're more than welcome to go based on the information that you have in front of you. I only ever report on official information that I can confirm for you and provide you information about. But it would be irresponsible not to mention it at the very least, right? So don't toss out your Krez just yet. If you happen to be someone who invested in getting one, it could be something that you might want to use in the near future. But as it stands, Leyend's kind of pooping on every other weapon, like, to be perfectly honest. And it's kind of sad because not only is it the best offensive choice, it's also the best defensive choice. It is just flat out the best weapon that's currently available right now. At an exact 1-to-1 comparison using Fixa Wix, Leyend's about 3.5% stronger, a little bit over. And if you max out, of course, like it's going to be 5.2%, 5.5%, which is massive, a massive jump. I know these percentages don't seem like a whole lot, but everything in PSO2 is multiplicative. These percent jumps are pretty big. You're going to see some bigger damage numbers. And the big thing about Leyend is it's supposed to be a supportive weapon. So those of you out there that like to play on more of the supportive side, this is kind of like your jam here. You've got something like Leyend. You have stuff like Leyend is supposed to provide a buff for everyone, which still can be done. It's still a thing. So you are going to be seeing that, but you can see how far it's fallen behind, right? Like if we take a look at something like Leyend uptime, it's behind by about 6% to a Volgen weapon. Granted, it hasn't updated, but you can kind of get the idea here. And then, dude, if you're just bad with Krez emotional damage, your Volgen's going to outright beat it. So that is something that's pretty nice. You don't have to worry about the damage or anything along those lines. And of course, they've set it up in a way that EX augments don't actually have issues with these weapons and their potentials. However, your individual play may vary. So at the end of the day, what are we looking at? So Volgen is still a very good budget choice. It's really, really strong. It's almost as strong as a Krez. If you're looking at it purely from the cost of money, it's not worth going after a Krez in current time frame. If you already have one, it is still stronger and it is totally fine to continue to utilize. However, the strongest weapon currently in our format is Leyend, and it ain't even close. Unfortunately, it is straight up 3.5% stronger, which again doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're actually doing calculations, it is a pretty big deal. And that's it. That pretty much covers all the new upgrades for the weapons, how strong they actually are, and what I recommend you guys going after. Like I mentioned when I was talking about the Volgen weapon, I'm not the biggest fan of how quickly that power has increased, not just because I have a Krez personally, but because it just kind of signifies that they're going to be going about less upgrades probably and more horizontal progression, which isn't a bad thing. It just means that we're closer to the end of that series than I realized we would have been at this point. So it is also possible they could just go even further. And to be perfectly honest, I would have preferred there be a situation where weapons caught up to Krez, not just immediately outright power crap them. Now, assuming the streets are to be believed, that does mean that the concept of Krez upgrading is a possibility, and it does mean that, you know, your weapons are going to have a bit more value, and that does seem to be something they keep doing a whole lot and they keep pushing. So it's possible something we might see in the near future. However, what it's going to take to upgrade those weapons, what they're going to upgrade to, only time will tell. And if they keep putting in content that we're not the biggest fan of, it's going to kind of suck. That's all I've got for you guys today. If there's anything I missed, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to keep up with more. As always, thank you to the channel members. You guys are fantastic, and I appreciate every single one of you. And I will see you all in the next video. Take care, my friends. Peace out.